Is this a question?
가서 데리기다 또다 노도로 데려왔어. 간지. 아니 나라도 샘도 요문이 가서 여러베스 다 노도 데려와.
So in short, we try to separate between the mind and affliction. If that's the correct topic for today, can one of you shake your head?
That's right.
Thank you.
Like that shortcut, right?
How do you feel? Do you think your mind is separable from the affliction or not?
It is separable.
I think the affliction are added to the mind. The affliction do not belong to the mind. The mind on itself is pure. It's us who create the affliction to the mind.
So where are we right now? So what are the reasons that we could not separate between the mind and affliction?
Because we are ignorant.
Okay. Ignorant for what?
We don't have a grasp of reality.
Good. Okay.
So how do we overcome this problem?
Well, the first thing would be to apply the antidote to any affliction that we have. We have to meditate on them and understand where they come from, so we can make them disappear. We can get lower and lower and disappear.
Good.
You know, you got it. So I don't have anything add to it.
Okay, so I'm leaving. Bye.
Yes, you're on the right path, and what you just mentioned is the correct.
Hey, Amy, where do you live? I know her maybe almost 15 years, right?
I think Jennifer had a question. So Jennifer, you know, Geshe, Jennifer had a question. You wave your hand, right? Yeah.
No, I can wait. Yeah.
Okay. 제가 다 가제 시당 지나다 지나서 봐제 다 로종 뭐 제사로다 배 배셔 뭐 따다래스. 아니 단 로로.
수로는 기절아.
제자는 지나서 유모 간지 임바 유모 간지 제가 요와. 간지 매와 제거다 가서 마치 장타르다 로종 제사래.
So you guys have been studying a lot, and you read a lot, and you know a lot, and you know how affliction arises, and you also know how to overcome and eradicate affliction.
제가 들려서 당에 막 공부를도 받아 다와다 전에 지름 보시는 달 전에는 시험에서 다 장보는 보시고 패션 디볼라 뉴뉴들 송상 게 대셔자지 아니 나랑 가서 막 강화 템바도 망하고 곰자기적인 로기.
Therefore, I'm not going to quote Nagarjuna or Shantideva, or for that matter, Lama Tsongkhapa. What I really like to do this session is to go through a text by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and then explain in a few words, followed by meditation.
와, 세상 가서 곰세대 자와있는 가서 갑툭 가서 뒤에 통가 말이야. 다 되게 빌로다 다와단 까만 고기여 봐.
So when we apply meditation to our practices, although it wouldn't be a quick fix, it takes a month, years, and sometimes even a year.
don't give up, okay? Today, by the counter, Tamburum check up and a color to Dodo, see, Ruruchenia. And then you use in a soldier change that the zone to test Lojon in a top there, Lelion was.
I found the Dalai Lama's explanation is very concise in few words. So if you apply them in your meditation, I'm sure you will find them very effective.
제다다 배는 가라서 배는 조조 가라서 고야대다 차단이래서 차단이 매와서 알 당보 차단이 간이 제게도 깨닫고 그러고서 간이 제게도 간이지 가원의 제게도 간이지 제게도 가도 제게도.
So for us, most useful, I think, a starter is to look at the attachment and the hatred, and to look at how attachment and the hatred arises, how to eradicate them, and where the affliction stems, and how it's really generated itself into full effect.
제당가도 나사라고는 나사게 싸워도 되치고도 싸워도 때 맞춰봐이나 아니 나사도 가디나 자야면도 뒤서버리는 거로.
Just like a disease, we really need to go to the root of the disease rather than symptom.
제당가도 차단데 간이 제게도 전화서 삼로지 단다시. 차바도 나와서 간이 제용도.
So let's think about it. How does attachment and hatred arises?
다음에 제대로 술에 제게도 가래래 제게도.
And secondly, we need to think about where does our attachment and hatred goes to? You know, on what object these affliction arises and how?
제가 차단하는데 차단 알아 제게도 세면서 생각해요 말아서 맹골에 제게도 강발에 제게도 세면 제게도 ስለ서 가지 알아 제게도 생각을 봤어.
So when we think about affliction, we usually identify it with ourselves, saying, I am angry. And the attachment really comes out of me.
대야배는 아주 배는 심지 참만을 잡아채게 말을 심지 참만을 당화채게 말했어. 대야 셔라바라채게 요래 셔라.
And if we look carefully, that our attachment or hatred does not really goes to everyone. You know, we don't get attached to everyone. In the same way, we don't get angry at everyone. But specific, individuals that our attachment goes to. Is that correct?
먼저 심지 참만을 안에 잡아채게도 제게면도 왔어.
We don't get attached to all sentient beings, right?
아니 심지 참만을 당화채게면도 왔어.
At the same time, we don't get angry at all sentient beings.
다 나중 그 사람 알아도 시기 옆에나 잘라라 때문에 차단치게 되네. 되게 차단도 흉침을 싫어요 말했어.
Also, let's think about it. When we get attached to an object, that attachment is not as strong as an attachment to a person.
제가 된데 이사를 왜?
Is that correct?
다 나도 되지 전에 다 곰대대 작이 됐어.
So let's do a short meditation.
나도 차바 간이지간도 근데 소소 여도 오와라 나위 전에 텔라 차바. 소소라 여도 먹어와 나위 전에 텔라 당화치기도 왔어.
When we think about attachment, we get attached to a pleasant object or person. We get angry or hatred toward an unpleasant object or person.
대야한테 따사된 건도 배는 따사도 배 밀다야마다 다 샘한테 샬거로 샘나 간지 용도 샘나 섬탄 거도 샘 가래야.
So when we do the investigation, we need to look within our mind.
그거 나라 예도 오와 나가도 나라 예도 먹어 나가도 도와들래기도 왔어.
We usually get this sensation and a feeling that I get attached to that person. I get angry at that person.
제당 다티 제당라 못 보이래 배산. 근데 소소라야 아니 지 소소도 따반 톰바 소소라야 지금 간지 잡죠 로름 쟁에 들랑 아주 잡아쟁이 그래서 인심이 잡았어야 간지 보목은 저거 some 다고 말했어.
We get attached to people or person who maybe have something in common with us. And when we think about attachment, it doesn't really mean just attachment between a male and a female.
와. 그냥 나라소절랑 간주 따와 가지고 또 소소고까지 썸틀 식초모 쉬우저래서 대단 퉁에 뭐들랑 간주 잡아쟁이 온 거래서.
Usually, we get attached, a powerful attachment to people or person who share very strong sense of common things, who we share with their common values and so on. Is this correct?
근데 소소고 썸스지 조사가나 이거나 다 대라 가바장이질나 대라 당와쟁 거래서.
When we put our view on the table, when someone criticizes to this view, then we get angry or frustration. Is that correct?
간지 소소도 때 썸도 당다 만다와 따바 만다와 존나 대라 당와쟁. 아니 소소도 지 썸순 레터 집안에 대라 잡아다 지야다 고 노다지 차대로.
Usually, when we look at our situation, we get a frustration or angry at people who do not share our values, who do not share our views. At the same time, we get attached to people who share our values and views.
다 대양 용땅 싸워치다 가면 소소라야 예텔라 zemba shu kase chewa samji ani tela chi gawo chingala ani chaba shu cheada tela chi dawa chingala chaw ani karu dawa tela dawa chingala tela dawa shu chewa yung ta nganzu hago 그래서.
We must know that the stronger we have the grasping of self, and the stronger attachment we get, and the stronger hatred we get.
배잖아 소소가 배나 다 보지지 어제 소소가 지금 내까진 것도 같이 다 소소가 내까지 빈 야포 연바 된 접 고야게 소소 tel라 빼 매즈근 좀 휴침보 요이나 tel라 가파 장해질라나 다미 tel라야 sem바 나도 chen 마가고 자로 그래서.
For example, when we initiate a project and we have an incredibly strong we have a very strong identity with that project, and we really wanted to closely associate that project with ourselves, right? And when someone criticizes to our work and project, and then we get incredibly upset.
다 된대 잡아서 소소지 차시 여와지 이나 차지대 코소 샘라지 등즈 그리고 텔라에 차바슈 첨부 매와이나 개세 매지기 전한테 되면 가서 텔라 세게 가네 다와도 빼 슈초인 그래서.
In simple, we have a project, and that we don't have a very strong passion, to accomplish it, and we have a little bit more neutral feeling toward that project. And in that case, when others criticize to this project, we have less angry and frustration.
다 대나지게 아니 소소라 된대게 파자 여와지 다 텔라지게 왔다 처럼 자야 보도 된 게처럼 잡으시는 밑에랑도 믹스가 소이 샤바슈 체체 그래서.
And likewise, when we have a very highly, appreciated project that we closely identify with ourselves, and when people back you up, saying you're correct, we'll back you up, let's do it together, you get, attached or attachment to these people easily.
다야 된대지 그 소소라야 차바슈 시라메 와치 야 미치게 될라 가오체와이나 양어도 믹스가 밑에라 뒤 퇴게 아니 코야 차바슈 좀 제가 말해서.
And likewise, when we have a project that we don't have a strong passion about it, and although other people, support you to accomplish it. We don't get as a strong attachment to this person as the project. We have a very strong identity or associate with ourselves.
제가 대리인도에 저도 삼도 안 됐어요.
Please check this.
당도 도시에 곰들이 잡긴다세.
So with this, thinking, we would like to do a short meditation.
가는 너네치는 섬랑도 자동에 레는 자도 간가 레레레레 라그레 단다도 오 테레테레 춘도 라그레 삼에 나고에서.
If I, keep going and keep telling you this, you will all agree with me, say, you're right, you're right.
얘나 간도 샘기 간도 가디나까지 디쇼로 쇼노고도 가디 디쇼 쇼노고도.
But still, our mind will continue, with our old pattern, way of thinking.
제 장아 나도 하고요나 하고요라다 있나 다때 네번이야 말했어.
Although we say we understand, but we didn't get a really strong conviction.
제라와 제다 텐데 임바연자 아니 간도 가서 다때 곰대 잡쇼 되오잖아. 담보 소소 그배나 소소 메세나 때 몸보 종료하래 배나 소소 따와 배나 소소 따완 thân 삼다. 소소 따완 thân 밑에는 튼비 진세 가랭이 바테 삼지 당쇼was어.
And so let's do a short meditation. First, I want you to meditate on, a strong view that you hold, you highly appreciate. And then think about people who share, this view and this value with you.
오케이. 제자 아니 가도 대삼을 따죠. 대 까망아 곰잡쇼 삼따쇼.
I would like you to contemplate maybe about 5 minutes.
오케이. 근데 소소 따완 튼쇼 대배나 소소 초가 소소 제메 삼단 되거 봤어. 근데 소소 부고 삼단데 된 이미 진세 가려야 삼따쇼 왔어.
I want you to really think about people who shares our values and views and think about them. Let's say your partners or your children, anyone who really highly appreciate your view and they share your value.
오케이. 오케이. 다 까망아 곰자이다스.
So we do 5 minutes meditation.
제가 동에 셰드나 고당도 셰 도와드 캐요 말아. 나도 때서 곰잡다 참 곰잡다 곰곰도 왔어.
I can continue to go over this, but it wouldn't be very helpful for you. But rather, if we do this like a step by step, pausing and do reflection on this by means of meditation, this may have a much more benefit to you.
오케이. 뭐야? 제가 저라도 가리러 온 거거든.
What did you get?
제가 간제 소소기 따완 준비 전세대 간제 소소까지 텔라 가위 전세대 아니 소소도 따완 준비 전세대 연구를. 그래도
When you are fond of someone, one of the reasons is that you feel you are sharing values and views with that person.
다 드리그 소소 딱가는 소소고 다 녀원 숨사 텔라야 아니 가노고 식강에 땡에도 일레바나 야 텔라 차비 차바다 텔라 당에 당와 쟁거래 텔라 야보체나 텔라 가오체와 안 텔라 야치 야보 맞잖아 텔라 당와 쟁거래서
Middle, Mischenberg, middle. And also, when you have this fondness to that person, coming from the assumption that you share values and views, right? Let's say your partner or children. And then when others criticize to that person, you also get angry at them. When others, become similar with fondness, or express fondness to this person, you feel closer to that person.
근데 용도 왔어. 용도 왔어.
And does it happen to you?
전서 용고에 왔다 가서 좋아 용화를 가서 신기도 하던데.
So these, actually come from our experience. We can inference this through our experiences.
그래와. 다 안에 지나서 배나 지나서 미 강가를 떼서 따오만 해서 열다 간지 가서 다 자세에 된 것도 백 튀어나지만 간지 소소 따오만 해서 용거를 했어. 막가던데.
So usually there are people we do not share common values and views. Maybe you call them enemy, or even you don't have enemies, but you do have a people who you do not share your value with. You have any people who you disagree strongly?
પછી તે કાજે semla chico tap devo shraming ngado kanga legre kaje soso taw manteng ilene te chathare kaje.
And there are people when they don't share our values and view, we have a little bit of problem with them.
다 대용화다 소수의 대용의 삼투들이야 차바 휴치중 방금 그랬어.
So how we determine that you have a fondness, you are fond of these people and you're not, it depends on the level of the attachment that you have toward these people.
대대당 해줘 다 군두가 차페 되버려 송샤스네 등유제 대우다 송샤죠 대내다 가나 카데오지 셰고 말다.
And I'm sharing this with you from His Holiness's book, the textbook. I'm not I'm just talking out of my head.
제단다 전화도 배나 미치게 소속이 배나 소속이 단대는 게 라바 나지지네 소속이 지 빠져지소 아니 대다 미드도 냠도 내가 제거해나 미드가 어딘 지금도 라바이나 계란게 퍼져들라 아니 차바 슈가제 채워 점지 미 퍼져들라 담아 슈제나 그래서
as we talked before about a valuable project, when you present a very valuable project to someone, and then realize that they don't share similar values and views regarding this project. So the stronger you have, the stronger attachment you have toward this project, the stronger reaction you get when people respond and their views about the project to you.
제가 근데 다양하도 검시하겠다 다 차도 근데 상황이 당셔서.
So let's do a short meditation about contemplating.
근데 제가 미치도 테스트 다운만다 좋소서. 전화 종급이 제가 가능해 샷. 오늘 텐디가 다운만다 휴체주 가서도 대상 당셔.
Let's say, have you ever had a conflict of views and values with someone else on any subject, and think about how strong your anger toward these people by thinking how much you really value the project or idea that you have presented to them.
와야 다들 까마같이 검장이다.
Let's do it in a few minutes.
내전에 소소 죄송합니다. 다 소소고 좋아하던 게임에서 담아가지 셴바지라 인다야.
So let's move this from our spouses and the children to someone else.
양다 소소가 내가 제로 양만다 소소가 딱 같이 company.
We can think about our colleagues, people we work in our company.
Okay. Okay. 제가 다 너도 제당 안 주고 남주 저도 타면 로다로 오래 가서 챙겨 왔어.
So usually you think this is so obvious.
그래봐. 다 그게 차바다 담아 째서야 돼. 소소고 예달아야 아택은 전부 슉 채무지라 알아요. 그래서.
So in terms of our attachment or hatred to someone and to the project, it's corresponding to the level of the self-grasping that we have toward that object.
맨날 내가 폰데 서바이메 카블라야 가서 차와이나 아니 텔라야 빼 세나 슉 채무시길래 그래서. 타고 가로 님바 차세베 칼라지 좋아이나 아니 가도 다 내가 말했어.
Let's look at it.
가르치네레서나 아니 수수지라 텔라 차바 슉체 중에 뭐지?
Let's look at the iPhone. When the iPhone is so fresh and new, we have a much stronger attachment to it, and we feel so stingy in terms of using it. Then as the iPhone become old and we care less about the phone, this is because by then our attachment to the phone has been lessened. As a result, we also have a less like a grasping of our mind toward that iPhone. Is this the case for you?
다들 선물이 다죠. 대도나 선물이 다죠. 대 선물도 추억 가리지 쟁여다. 단 담보되는 건데 춘춘 가도 선물은 코고 그랬어. 대가 가도 내신 얘기 그랬어. 나도 레가 되는 가도 레가 되는 가도 녜 녜셰도 녜면서 가도 가드는 지와 다 도움도.
So let's think about this. You may think that this is, so obvious and there's no use for doing this kind of thinking. But that is not the case, actually. When you investigate on each single kind of thoughts that will go through our mind, and when we find the correct reason, then we will be convinced, we get a conviction. Once we get a conviction about that, reality, and then we are in a much better shape to deal with it.
Okay. Take another pin rotada that be parabra, parabun rotada, the tada, and the lolly. Yawo, Yoto, and another comjada, and tell a captain penguins or what.
Once we know the steps toward really solving this problem, and then if we use the step and meditate, then our antidote become much more potent.
Cheda petena, that charala, chalaji, so gasaki, chalaji, or tellavada, and ya tambo hima tambo peg gagi, taco nimacha the sharako, double maja was lavani, chewa legdu. Tico some ticola and to Kamangasi and some dash was.
And let's say a valuable object to you. And when the object is new, you have a much stronger attachment to this object. And then as time passes, and when the object becomes worn off, and then you have a less attachment, right? And I want you to really go through that process for a few minutes.
Okay. Get in the gale, Murja. And could get common on them. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That can do that.
So how was it?
Chedan do chin a gom jab samlo down, Ganzo chick. Penamato chinganzo chick, Taradi in Tayo, or rather Tayo.
So if we go through this approach by constantly reflecting, and then eventually we get this like a conviction.
제 장아타 니나라 빼자 님발 장보러 빼자 님발 소요다. 나라조질라 아니 이 바로 발라 차베 차바 슈 제주다. 다음에 다마 슈 제주데 소소라 텔라 zembe 아테게 zemba 슈 제주다.
His Holiness mentioned in this book our attachment to the affliction, our attachment and hatred to the object is corresponding toward how we personalize the object. The level of the personalification is corresponding to the attachment, the level of the attachment and hatred.
제가 딱 대응한도 고아대하고 얘기거든요.
So we really need to get a good understanding about this statement.
제가 너 진행한도 삼로당 배야 나 얘들 차바 슈 치월래도스. 내가 코치 차드나 코 세마 토어샤 레그메도스. 다 가르쳤나? 아니 그게 등 투사데 수술라 얘들 차바 슈 치줄라 알래거든.
And so as we contemplate on this, and in terms of attachment and feeling toward the object, it depends on how much kind of attachment that we hold to the object. The stronger the attachment we have to the object, the stronger feeling we have about the object. And as a result, our reaction to the object is also different according to the level of the attachment that we hold to this object.
다 대야 근데 잡아 제주되는 수수질라야 만드 슈치라라 그랬어. 수수질라 수수가 따와 슈첨보 만드 슈첨보 여와이나 수수를 내가 가르치는 때라 잡아 슈치하다 하는 용어래서 송도.
And this also in return depends on how much the self-grasping we have. 딩란주 응어버딜 던지스고라 릉일야 짐부축치준스고라.
맞아니라 수수를 뺀다 수수 따와라 짐부축치 뭐여와. 뺀다. 댕게 뉴조인 사람들 야마나 내 따보자전스네 야마나 내 가진 있어. 소소랑 간도 슈첨보 가서 여와 짬지그 아니 소소 잘라라야 될 때가 나도 슈첨보 온 거더라 와.
라는 가도 슈체네.
셰여 짬지 소소가 변나 따와 소소가 캔래 될라야 다가도 슈첨보요.
So the most important thing here is we will find out the stronger the self-grasping and that we hold, the stronger we identify with the self, the stronger attachment we would have toward the object, our external object. Now I would like you to check if this is the case or not.
내가도 삼로당 배나 계제시는 가도 시에는 도와케요마다 가디나 직시야 라데로 와시 간지 아니 삼로당 라트가 거고도.
And if we do too much talk, it really wouldn't make that much difference. But if we instead reflecting, the more we reflect on these issues, the more benefit we will get out of it.
가르르세나 배나 간주가 달로종 제요로 곰자요로 와서 얘나 소소라 직강에라고 근데 테베 갑라야 나르테라 돈을 제토고만도 와.
This is, we already have a good example and experience. Although we studied a lot about Dharma, we know a lot about Dharma, but when we are faced with a problem, we're not able to really overcome or deal with it.
제가 디가 가르던 것은 로종 주부 ընդ르면도 다테코 냠내 전에 코 페나 칼라로나 카나야 룩치 소데 속이야 간제 가로다 속 되는 막 미쳤다고 그러더스.
This shows that merely studying Dharma is not good enough, but we have to practice it. And like by merely seeing our food. It's not good enough. We have to eat, we have to chew it.
배차잖아 지나서 변나 뜻이봐야 가상나도 코비드-19 담보인데 시답 가로 숨바로 가로 고주가래 미강갈 샘랑 감다 소속해서 나게 매와야야 샘랑 감다다 지나다 아다 쇼지 딱 가르쳐하는 거는 샘랑 감다 쇼요레스.
And this is just a similar experience that we had back in March when COVID-19 first, appeared. We were really anxious and stressed about it.
근데 단다 나사 단다는 정말 단다 많아도. 옛날 지나서 샘래야 가로 감다다 지나다 녀마다 단지 치와 가려도.
And now, if you look at the current situation, we have more patient, we have more cases than back in March. But then look at the level of the stress in our mind. And can you see the differences? Has there been change in terms of our attitude toward COVID? There's obvious more cases than before. But our stress and anxiety is not, as much as before. Is this the case for you?
제대로 가르치는 영어로는 그 내만이 가서 맞다베 라지 엠바 코치 인저로 라지 엠바지 가서 란체 요 옛나 아니 내마 담부감네 가서 텐디게 샘나 감라지 영어 말 단다도 집어로 쳤시그래 와서
why, the change in terms of our attitude toward COVID? The reason is right from the beginning, back in March, if we know about the nature of impermanence, if we know that everything changes, if we are totally convinced, and if we really not only know about the nature of the impermanence, but if we actually realize it, right from the beginning, we wouldn't get as much anxiety as we had.
제 tanate 학고도 마고에기 ям나 샘라 곰도 마고메 쳐봐다 용거다.
So this is the difference between merely knowing and by realizing it. On the other hand,
제가 당가서 곰자인다. 다 곰자인다 배나 소소그 배나 네스 텔라테니 배나 네스 카젤라테는 가서 샘라 진지나 당감으로 시모용와. 네스 카젤라테는 가서 샘라야 아니 차다샤 용고메와데 가르치네레 대골 섬을 따셔와서.
So I would like you to contemplate a situation, and you can choose any situation that when situation presented to us, we get incredible anxiety initially, and then sometimes when similar, the nature situation present to us, but we have less anxiety toward it. But although the effect of the situation is same, but still our attitude toward that is different. And I want you to investigate why that happens. Do you get this kind of experiences in terms of situation?
제가 때 가르치는 게 있다고도 대가도 따져도 가서 아래 가는 데는 전부 채워요다 내용을 내는 전부 쳐 내용을 가서 그러나 카드 랩톱을 됐는데 샘랑 가서 땡 예바도 녀고 말했어.
And so we want to investigate why that happened. That happens, and this is because we didn't really realize the that situation and our personification, right? The identifying with our self has the corresponding effect, and so I want you to really investigate that.
Okay, 당가도 까마카제 곰자긴다. 디콜로 삼노다. 다때 제고면다. 데리테 제고면다.
So we're going to contemplate a few minutes on this situation, and I would like you to do analytical meditation.
그냥 난디 내선 디 쇼가랑 갈 프레삼라 빼면서 강해 줘서. 난 내래 강해서 조마서. 한 디가랑 빼면서 가오 줘서. 내래 가면서 가오 조마서. 다때 가르치는 레시컬 제금 제셔와.
So I would like you to really do analytical meditation, saying, when that situation presented to me, I had such a strong reaction. And then on the other hand, when I had a similar situation, although in the same effect, I didn't have that much, reaction. And I want you to really compare this and to really know the deep causes for the different attitude that attitude that we produce to these different scenarios. And you can use any scenario.
Okay. Oh yeah. 다 대거나게 다 자와 투사더니 차단 제출 거 자와 투사데 조스나 아니 다 난드슈 제출을 하래레스 어다 빼자데 두 손자스 된디게 차바데 아니 nye 가로다 수수 가오쇼 텔라쇼에 차바도야다 아니 다쇼라데 다와다 도야라 다 Antidote 야쇼데 가나 수수지지 텔렌즈벤 즈바데 슈촌다고 그래서 대용화라 수수지랑 난드 슈쳤다고 그래서 어떻게 빼자디몰랑 간서 덤 너도도 잡샤.
So His Holiness mentioned in the book that our attachment and hatred toward an object or toward a person is corresponding to the level of the self-grasping that we have toward the object or toward the person. And so in order to tackle our self-grasping mind toward the object or toward the person, we need to really reduce the self-grasping mind or the self-identification within ourselves, the lesser that we associate, or lesser the self, the lesser identification we have with ourselves, the lesser attachment that we have toward an object or a person. 지식이 은지다 던지디 충을 요즘 그 지식이 아주 차고디 충주거래 성업디가 나서 그럼도
대 연배가 빼가도 대 연배 빼 가래서는 간도 빼나 다내 욕으로 와내 암전이야 들어와 나도 내년에 그다 내가 잡아 쳐야 돼 내가 잡아 줘요 그래서
one reason in terms of our attitude toward object corresponding to the how strong we identify with ourselves. Let's look at the pen and then earphone. We have a naturally more attachment to the earphone than to the pen.
제가 나도 가서 누구들 나와야 나도 시라시라 샘플이란 거 가들 시라란 거 말했어.
If we lost the pen, we may not be that frustrated.
근데 저기도 저라도 찍다다.
Can you examine to see if this is the case for you as well?
제가 내가 슈치에 뭐 내가 나가도 세나 쳐야 내가 슈치원은 내가 나 슈치원에 와대 나한테 제줄라 때네 아니 소소질라 세바기 맞이 용거 봐도 다 하고 그래.
And when we look at the situation between losing a pen versus losing an earphone, of course, losing earphones would cause us more frustration. This is because we have a stronger self-grasping toward the earphone than toward the pen.
제가 소소질라 나한테 슈 가서 쳐와 잠지 소소락 셈라 강에 마트리에 와서 텔레되는 거도 고요 그래.
This, therefore, the stronger we have the self-grasping in our mind, the harder it is for us to deal with, losing, let's say, earphone and so on.
다대쳐도 곰지 잡쇼 와서 렌드보다 까마 가지 전화도 대체고면 다 드링아도 드링 제고면다 산ing아도 조금 제행이스.
And so I would like you to do more analytical meditation on these topics. Tomorrow, we will spend more time on concentration, meditation on concentration.
Oh yeah. Just some check it out, leg do.
And you get any feeling?
The feeling do ke ta kaji da na. Kaji ngadu sem la chita kaji nge baro nye gore, nge shiro nye gore ro.
So we really need to get a strong conviction or be totally convinced about this kind of situation.
제 장아 다 디페션을 가려서나 로. 얘도 오와라 안에 차바다. 얘도 먹어와라 다음에 다와 도비 다음에 로된 고비 체다. 다 안에 간도 남베가 나라 안에 간선데 안에 슈추어다 다때 터모마베 남베가 로타레스로.
And so His Holiness mentioned in the text that in order to overcome our attachment to pleasant object and our hatred toward unpleasant object is corresponding to the self-grasping mind that we have. And so in order to tackle our attachment and hatred, we need to tackle the self-grasping mind. And this is a very unique Buddhist approach to deal with attachment and hatred.
제가 땅 알아서 샘게 차다 도야 요만 도야 요레스 다니자 가제 도마다 안에 간도 아니 마르 모베 온 거래서 차도 텔레다 따다 용데레스.
And we usually say, well, we have an antidote to overcome attachment and hatred. This is because it's produced by ignorance. So you all know that. You always say, we can deal with the attachment, hatred, because we need to overcome ignorance, right? You all know that.
제가 당가도 곰자고 그래서 곰자 삼로땅 삼로땅 가도 녜시 녜거든. 삼로마다는 녜시 녜거 말이래.
So yes, this is the case. But in order to realize that, in order to really get convinced about this approach, we need to rely on meditation. We need to do meditation again and again to really realize this fact that ignorance produces attachment and hatred.
제가 되게 해도되면 간제 소소라야 안에 가르고 이해텔라 차바 아무나 다음에 체존라 때는 소소라 되게 소와 휴지 유제도.
So if you examine when you are strongly attached to an object or person, so you also have a much stronger feeling and emotion toward that object. So the level of the emotion that we have toward an object or person is the level of attachment or hatred that we hold toward that person or object.
제가 대당하고 배샤 마보로네 배샤나 봐 나도 즉 다도도 나한테 즉 때는 뭐 밥이어로 왔어. 다소소 곰잡 삼로 땅 아니 즉 삼라 즉 빠빠로 시야에서 즉 니버로 수야에서 돼 용고에서 돼.
So when we study and when we meditate and then constantly contemplating on these particular reasons, and eventually we will be able to tame that attachment or hatred. And so to tame the attachment and hatred, we not only read and study, but we really need to rely on meditation. Meditation meaning constantly reflecting on these reasons.
제가 데려온다. 배나 지나서려야 나타나는 게 배샤인 봐. 벤델라야 단 델라인이 주도를 채워야 서래.
So as I give you example, the difference between the pen, losing a pen, and losing earphones. There is, of course, a different reaction we have to this, right?
전설의 효도매.
Do you have a different reaction for losing either a pen or earphones? Would you have a reaction? Different reaction, or you have the same reaction whether you're losing a pen or earphones?
Which one more? There's one more. There's one more.
$100 versus $1.
Good example.
제 차가 소수질라 티가 가로 value second 막 가지 소수 그때 내가 고모 자예스 내 고치야였어 내 고모 찌레스 고쳐 소소 삼투고 델파 고 따셔야 was.
You're totally correct. This is $100 value. This has a value of $1, and that concept is produced in our mind, and we created that concept. We reputed that concept.
나도 가르나 코니라야 배체 체동 배체 내 배체 체는 내 배체 등하도 삼단 거에 말 스군 체를 스군 총을 대상 다셔야 그래서.
Usually, we do not think about the usefulness of the object, but we think about the value of the object.
제자 이거 매와이나 이게 돼요 말했어. 내 매와나 폰 년초 그래서 배체 제주 체와나.
So if you look at the function of the product, without a pen you cannot write, but at the same time without earphones you can still listen to devices.
제자 코니라 지 가로 다 그러고 소소가 내가도 제발래 내빠도 욕거와도 매바잖아. 뺀댕원이 짜체도. 나도 대상 따요 말해. 나도 설마다데 내랭고 마트에 내랭고 뉴아트에 대상 따셔.
If you look at the value, if you look at the mere function of the product, of course, pen has a much more, functional meaning to us than the earphones. But we usually, when we try to, when we try to think about attachment, we don't look at really the function of the product, but we look at the values that we attach to the object, and that value is reputed. Can you say reputed or labeled or created by our mind?
Okay. It's technically ask a question, you guys.
I'm looking at the dictionary on my.
You mean designated, Tenzin?
Designated or like a label, like we label value to certain object, right? And some people say we put we designate values.
Attribute. We attribute value.
And also repute. Have you
attribute?
Attribute. Because before they used the word repute in this context. So attribute, the how much value that we attribute to the object seems like more corresponding to the attachment that we have to the object than looking at the function of the object.
제자 소주고 삼다더라도 아테코간 내 군체레스 단내 플라나 페사그레스 내 동안 요쇼를 삼대야 was.
And therefore, exactly when we look at an earphone versus a pen, when you lose a pen, we can say, I can get another one easily.
제가 누치 삼다나 마 제지 빼나 소수기 빼나 삼도 땅다게 차네야. 소수가 내리지 연 삼데 텔라 삼도 땅치 아니 되게 같이 된도되게로.
So there, in many cases, we have a very similar, outcome, because first we conceive something, right? And based on that conception, and then we determine, what is valuable, what is not.
제장아 도치네 곰잡 삼로당 가르드나 그게 옛날에 미베게 아니 차다 제 주주데 수수jel라 텔라 차바 제주 텔라 라래 야왔던 거 저한테 거로 봤어.
So when we look at the level of our attachment toward a person or an object, it's corresponded to the level of the attachment that we hold, level of the the value that we hold toward that object or person.
제장아 아니 수수가 jel랑 난도 슈 체절라 때네 맨날 전화라 소 돌았던 거 전화 아니 따때 가오쇼죠. 아 저랑 드림들랑 이제 텔라지 콘로 사야 돼요. 와다 수수jel라 소소라지 가르 가지 난도 슈 가세 채웠던 게 돼요. 거로 봤어.
So same was the stronger self-grasping that we hold to the person, to ourselves, the stronger reaction we get when people either make a compliment or criticize to us.
제자 때나 메가 만나가 간제 주대 주제 빠고서 때 내가들이 투되거든.
And therefore, usually we say, we prefer compliment and to criticism. And therefore, people say we need to overcome the 8, worldly dharmas.
제가 누구 참아 삼노다지 삼노다 루루로 도도로 전에 다 소소고 간제 칼라로 서면 주대 소소 사토고 그래.
And therefore, we really need to bring all of them to a same point, and then we constantly reflect on that, and we need to rely on our kind of reflection.
근데 인사를 저도 하고 돼. 근데 인사 전도 되게 돼.
Do you think? Do you agree with this thinking?
제가 안에 삼로 땅다가 저와 로고도 로고만도.
As you reflect, do you get any change in terms of your attitude toward how you perceive things, how you get attached to it by reflecting with this approach? Is there any change?
근데 지나서 단대 했나 다 당연히 날 주셔야 봤나 또염 내두라고 했나. 가장 너마디 남라 집에 가서 단대 가서 지나서 저와 로도 샘라 삼로 땅다 저와 로도.
One change that I already mentioned before, when COVID-19 first appeared, the level of the anxiety that you had, right? And then if you look at your attitude toward COVID-19 now, and check the differences between the anxiety that you attribute toward it. Of course, there's a change, right? So has there been change in terms of your attitude toward COVID, comparing back in March and now? Have you observed the differences in terms of your attitude toward it? So if you look at it from the COVID itself, it's getting even more serious than before. But if you look at the kind of a general attitude toward COVID now, people seem like care less now than before. So there is change. And do you observe that too? And so it's very clear that the change is from your changes in your attitude, but not actually on the COVID situation. If you look at the COVID itself, is getting worse and worse, but your attitude toward it is like becoming less and less, you actually care less and less now. When I say you, I mean general public.
Do
you get this kind of attitude, the differences attitude that you hold toward the COVID? Do you have similar experiences or not? So regardless of the change in the object, but our attitude always changes. Does that happen to you?
Okay. Any questions?
Geshe, I was wondering which book of His Holiness are you using?
Geshe Chadip 그들에서.
네.
Can you read it, Tanzala?
Yeah, it says the lamp for 3 principal paths.
Okay.
This is His Holiness also. 내려도 근데 깔라 마보지 내가 좀 두절해 샷.
And this is a collection of His Holiness teaching, published in a single volume.
제가 그때는 nenga이도 추루룩 제마 시동 남주 인사 말에 인지가나 연내면 나고 마서.
And they, chose carefully. They selected the most kind of concise, the advices. I'm not sure whether this has been translated into English or not.
지체는 안들이 배워는지 제하고 매든 내나라 가나 깔아 뭐뭐 그게 들어.
Is the important teaching of the Dalai Lama. Could that be the same? This is called the important teaching, and it's the essential Dalai Lama.
이 단데 양고름 저 깔로 계지디게 총두 신경도 뒤다 찍으려 했어.
다 대하고 매다 대만 보이잖아. 내 주주분이 대 주주분이면
this is very short compared to one you're holding.
Yeah.
And 기실라 가르자진이 되는 안 하고 되나려 가르자나려.
Geshe, when was yours published?
로카두 버드난도서디. But this is the Jameson Yala Geshe Jameson. Published in 2009. Yes, so this one has
hard to see.
Pajomo, then it's order de So this is the benefit of the Dharma, the meaning of the dependent origination, introducing renunciation, introducing bodhicitta, and so on. So these are the content. Now, George, can you look at yours?
Yes, it's about, so there is laying the groundwork, the Buddha, Four Noble Truths, Karma, the Bodhisattva ideal.
Different, it's a different.
It's different.
One. Yeah.
제가 군대가 대상 군대가 내치도 군대 갈라 차상 매왔지 내가도 주르륵 전해들이 마모도.
These days, what people do is instead of transcribing the entire teaching, they select some of the important portion and then they publish it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Judge.
So Geshe, behind you, you have two framed pictures. A beautiful picture of His Holiness, and he gave it to you. And then a beautiful picture of Lama Zopa, and he gave it to you. Which one you're most attached to?
Oh, both. Both.
I think that's Geshe Sogala.
Yeah, Geshe Sogala.
Oh, is it? Sorry, yeah. Good to see you.
Okay.
So Geshe, you were talking about the strength of our self-grasping and the strength of identifying with things. So how to cut that?
가로.
이제라 다는 만족지기 기저봐. 던지저봐. 저기 랑 규가 던지기 더 숙치준 저봐. 이게 뭐벌 비게 차고디 숙치준이야 도와줘봐. 나딘도 던지 근데스 맵 속에서.
비게 다들 소소젤라 차베 다 차바베나 예절하면 차바째라. 차바 다 깨고 말아 유들면.
No.
아니 유튜브에서 다 고치고 그래서.
The one I think approach is to really, because we have attachment toward an object, right? And we have the self-grasping toward an object. And we need to really, first of all, to understand the true nature of that object.
배나 미드라 차가요나 아니 미두바 고메다. 아니 지금 아니 셴바야나 나도 가로 셴바 고메다. 아니 이제 고한테는 마보여 왔어. 또 산이가도 또 마시나로.
And so, for example, if you have attachment toward a person, then you really look at the nature of that person, relying on different rupas and the unpleasant nature of physical forms and so on. And sometimes when you have anger at another person, we rely on compassion and loving kindness and so on. And I'll go more in detail tomorrow.
이나 디나게다 쪼테다 나데다 나데 테치가 나데 소소 나데 간제도 나랍지 나세야데 다 가로 자 첨보 슉 첨보진 향도 다때 나데 간에 소소 나데 타체체고래 소소 나나진 도도문도.
So of these antidotes, one of the most important, I think, antidote is to really investigate the self. And usually when we think about the self, we have such a kind of a precious attitude toward the self. And you really need to investigate how the self appears to you.
제가 안에 나데데 안에 나데데 나도 소와 나신 나데 매바지 소도고 란테 토바였나? 아니 나도 슈 총적으로 와.
Once we realize that the self we hold aggressive is not as solid as it appears to our mind, then this will help to reduce our attachment or our view toward this solid self. And we'll be able to reduce the strong grasping toward the self.
Okay, like that today. Now I have to go another place. I have to also open other account. Then if I can talk too much, then not much. You guys also do some more meditation. Think about the analytical meditation, then concentration. Then you can
Get a conviction.
Get conviction. Okay, when we got conviction, then it's really change our mind. Right now we say, "Oh, I know." Yeah, like that, but we don't have conviction. Okay? Like example, doctor said, don't eat the candy, it's bad for your teeth. We know, we trust the doctor, then we really immediately stop. Like example, if you really like the ice cream, say, oh, ice cream is very bad, you get sugar. We just immediately stop because we have got the conviction.
We got we are totally, yes, we got a conviction. That this is harmful to us.
Okay, like you guys also finish the pray, then see you tomorrow.